We welcome you to our program, Talk Radio. And this is a place where we can declare a safe space and discuss whatever is on the table.
All right.
I'm one of your hosts, Bishop Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and with me in studio is...
Minister Philip King Jr. That's a great way to start it off, Bishop.
All right, let's dive right in. Today's topic is going to be the foundations of eugenics. The foundations of eugenics. I think it's very important for us to come to understand that things that we see in society are not always just motivated by politics.
Yes, sir.
I believe there is a spirit behind many things, if not all things, that are going on in the land today.
A spirit, and not just a spirit. Yes, and I fully agree with you. And then sometimes, Bishop, those spirits just partner with crazy folk. And I'm sorry for saying it the way that I said it, but sometimes at the end of the day, that is what it comes down to.
Well, we have to come to an understanding. And I know what you mean, but for the sake of our audience, people are not born crazy.
For sure.
Now, there are some people
Certainly.
who go through genetic things, but we have to look at why people are doing what they're doing. Now, remember the scripture says, if any man be lost, it
Yes,
is
sir.
because the spirits of this time
Yes, sir.
have blinded their eyes. And so in many cases, I don't think people are aware of how far they've gone. Now, I know there are some who totally give themselves over, but even desiring to do that, there is, I believe, some mesmerizing that has gone on. Something has happened to the minds of those individuals where in many cases they are beyond help. And so when we talk about it then, I think we have to hit it from every aspect. Mm-hmm. And we know that foundationally the power of darkness seeks to deceive mankind, seeks to drive them into an overdrive of, as you said, things that were not normal and in many years considered to be crazy.
Yeah, and let me clarify that. See, let me clarify, Bishop. I think more so what I mean by that, you have very strong examples, like you said, intense cases where there are certain individuals that have crazy behaviors that because they have so enveloped themselves in that process, in that mode of thinking, let's say the mode of thinking, because it was inspired by demonic powers, other spiritual entities, XYZ, to us it can look crazy. So just to piggyback off of what you're saying, I think also in that persuasion, in that movement of the mind and the mental space to go to that place, it's almost as if along with that, like you said, it's an overdrive that seems like it gets deeper and deeper and deeper to where it seems like there's
I think this is why we're here. I'm from an older generation, you're from a younger generation.
Yeah.
And our communications and our talk are not always going to be the same. Mm-hmm. So I'm here to be, hopefully, the voice of reason. And then sometimes when I reach beyond, then hopefully the youth can be the voice of reason. But let's dive right into this because this is very important. I don't think a lot of people are aware of what eugenics are, but eugenics came along with a philosophy in society. And we're not trying to be racial here, we're just talking about things that were. And this is not a topic to spur more separation, but it's a topic to bring us into a spiritual unity to understand what's going on with the minds of people. Because not only did eugenics catch on, but it spread like wildfire in the communities that it was developed to destroy. And so basically, eugenics deals with what we call racial science. Racial science is, there were several doctors, several scientists who began to classify the human race, and they began to establish a pecking order of the human race. And in this classification, what occurred was they started to rate certain races based upon their perspective. And again, we have to understand that perspectivism is always based upon how we see, where we are turned to see. And I want us to fully realize that many things we just think is a political move, that many of these things, there is a spirit behind
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so racial science declared that certain races were not fully human. They were not fully developed. And based upon that, they were categorized as being more human, those that had a soul, and those that were at the top of racial pecking orders. And so along came, with that, is what they called the white man's burden. And that was those individuals that deemed themselves to be more human, deemed themselves to be more intellectual, and more evolved.
Right.
They began to take on the burden and the concept that they were chosen by God to redistribute the wealth of the land and to take care of the land and the gold and the minerals as a part of their divine duties.
You know, Bishop, can I just jump in there? I really think that we should, that it should be said again, because with everything you just said, that was a whole mouthful. But that was a literal reality. And we see that in a lot of times in our generation. I like how you said that there are two different generations at the table. A lot of people within my generation, we often like to talk about, you know, racial tension, slavery in the United States of America, XYZ. And with all those different things, like you said, where does someone come with the invention to even begin to believe that and have a whole system of structure of belief to even contrive that?
Well, that's why I say it's very
Yeah.
important for us to see it from
It's
a
spiritual.
spiritual
It's
connotation.
so spiritual.
Because when we look at it any other way,
Right.
I don't think it's even possible for a human being to come up with that assertion.
Exactly.
Specifically with the cognitive dissonance that's behind it, because somewhere they understand that this isn't true.
Right. Right.
Because they've seen, what they call the lower races,
Yeah.
or the indigenous species. They've seen all of the things that they have achieved,
Right.
how certain pygmies can exist in the
Yeah.
Calamari
Yeah.
desert,
Yeah.
and they know how to survive.
That's
where
right.
There is no water, where to find plants, and where to find medicine. All of those things symbolize a certain type of intelligence.
That's right.
But going back to again,
Yeah.
when we have the cognitive dissonance simply means a lack of harmony.
Yeah.
And so when we speak of lack of harmony in the cognition, then what one knows and what one believes to be true is not really vibing with what they know to be true. And so what's happening, it causes confusion in their emotive stance. And so they have to develop something to validate their behavior. And so what happened as a result of evolution,
Right.
and you cannot accept evolution and not accept social evolution.
That's so true.
And so those who push evolution are also pushing social evolution that states, again, that certain races in society are not fully developed.
Yeah.
Years ago, we read in our class, is the Negro human or is he a beast?
Wow.
And it was very interesting because from that era of eugenics, black people and indigenous people were not considered to be fully human.
Yeah.
And so in many cases, they said they are enough as far as in a species to interrelate and to produce children, but they are soulless. And so they are beasts.
Right.
And so this pushed a need in the minds of those who began to run away with racial science to feel that if they didn't do something to the inferior races, if they didn't stop it, then what would happen sooner or later, humanity would be burdened
Right.
because they didn't want to see people with mental issues, mental retarded individuals, people who were challenged with special needs, whether they were white, black, or whatever. And that's why there was a push to sterilize those who had special needs.
Yeah.
And then Margaret Sanger came up with a devised plan, Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood's major objective was to infiltrate into the black community and to stop the black community from having children. And so it was disguised as a mode of helping them deal with their economic situations and planning for children. But it was through that organization and that strategy that abortion reared its head. And because people didn't understand the spirit behind it, it was really a spirit to eliminate an entire generation of a race or races of people.
You know, Bishop, and we're getting on good territory now, because you see even this thought perpetuated in the times of, I want to say, around the times of the Civil War and things of that nature, and beforehand. You have one of the most iconic things that people often reference when they talk about these plans and strategies devised by Caucasian individuals, those individuals in the past, like the Willie Lynch letter. Mm-hmm. And in that letter, and I find it interesting, it talks about so many different things about how if the Caucasian man of that time and of that persuasion would follow that plan, it would consistently keep the black man under subjection and divided. And that's the interesting thing, the common thread that is within all of this, especially in the social aspect, is that division will keep people firstly down in every aspect of their lives.
Well,
but yeah,
I think this moves so much further beyond the Willie Lynch letters, because the Willie Lynch letters, and some debate whether they were real letters and so forth, and whether they were real or not, and some say that they were. It was a carefully devised plan to separate
and that's
people
the part,
and to keep people enslaved.
And that's the point.
Now, when we come to the modern day, where Planned Parenthood, that was so deviously done that even now in our society, in all races, you see people desirous of aborting children on the basis of their right to do whatever they feel is right for their body. But in many cases, again, it's a very small amount of people who get abortions based upon rape, incest, or endangerment to the mother. Excuse me. And so abortion has just become another way, another means to avoid responsibility. Mm-hmm. Now, if it means the death of the parent, or if it means that a person has to struggle through with an unwanted child because of rape or incest, that's left up to the parents to decide. And I don't even want to get into the moral argument.
Because that's a huge task there.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. But to simply abort babies based upon a plan, it is moving into an arena now where in many cases they say that the human race, specifically in the United States, is beyond the place of replacement. In other words, we haven't had enough babies born. And so there's a time period when if you don't move and have more births, then the populace will consistently decline. That's one of the issues with China. They had a one-child policy, and now they have a three-child policy because their population is declining. And so when we deal with eugenics, it set the whole tenure for racial discrimination. It set the whole thing for the murdering of many babies simply because the strategy was to keep those who were considered to be less than human from overpopulating this nation. And in instances, there were many things that were developed here in America that Adolf Hitler used in the Holocaust against the Jews.
Bishop, the thing about that is, though, and I think that's why I reference the letters, the supposed letters. Again, the common theme and the common undertone to all of these strategies, they are ultimately to destroy the human race, to keep us subjected to some type of power, and also to...
I think it goes even further, because to do those things against mankind,
yes,
it also not only destroys a sector of humanity,
that's right,
but it also blots out what that sector of humanity can bring to the total global humanity. And at the same time, it can produce fuel that causes both sides, or all the sides involved, to become antagonistic and to develop a generation of hatred and even a generation of so much disloathing, and also to cause what we would say an indifference to life. And I believe because of all of this abortion, many people don't value life anymore. And that's why they don't mind taking lives, taking the lives of children. And then one of the major points is that it also is going to cause an entire generation, an entire country, or countries to have to answer to God, for all of the things that they have done.
That's right.
And so eugenics, that science,
yes, sir,
where they measured the skulls and said, because they had so many lumps that they weren't intelligent, where they literally did experiments on human beings.
That's right.
And they did surgery without giving them any anesthesia.
That's right.
And so if we go back, and we don't have time on this segment to deal with some of the very horrendous things that were done to other people in the name of God and in the name of science.
Right.
And what we have to understand, this is not what Scripture teaches.
No, it does not.
This is what people wanted to teach, so they could remain in power or seize power, so they could control the wealth of the land. And so there are many things that when we talk about politically, that I believe with my heart of hearts that there is a spirit behind it, motivating it and keeping it perpetuated throughout the generations. And if the church is not careful, we will miss the entirety of what the enemy is doing, the enemy of the human race, and we will fight with one another. One thing we have to remember, the Scripture tells us, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
that's right,
but against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in high places, dominions. We are fighting with the powers of darkness. And when we forget it, we will turn to try to correct and to fix a society that is integrated with demon powers, and we will lose all the time. This is all the time we have. I thank you for joining us. God bless you.